Well, good evening, everybody. Tonight, we are going to be discussing interpreting dry pet food labels. Now, again, this will cover mostly the dry food for cats and dogs, but you will find that some of this will be applicable to wet food also. And if you have just a moment, run and grab your pet's food bag so we can go over it and I can point the parts of the label out on the front and the back so that it can be more interactive and you can see what I'm talking about. I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself in the comments. And while you are doing that, I have a question and I would like for you to include this in your comment. How happy right now are you or your pet with your pet's current food? On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is like, I need a new food ASAP because this food is awful. Help me. Or a 10 where you're like, I wouldn't change my pet's food if you paid me to. Where do you fall on that scale between 1 and 10 while you introduce yourself? And if you want, you can even put in the comments about what your pet's name is or what breed they are or anything else to just help us to get to know you just a little bit better. Always interrupted with the little ones in the back. Okay, so let's get started. We have a few that have commented. Thank you so much. I appreciate those comments. Now keep this number in mind that you rated your food because at the end, I'm going to talk to you about it a little bit further. Okay, so let's dig into it. First of all, who sets the standards for pet food labeling? Well, there are mainly two governing bodies that do this. There is the FDA, the Federal Food and Drug Administration. They pass laws governing animal feed marketing and safety, and they also investigate cases of reported health concerns in pet feed, which these are the folks that usually after they investigate something, they determine there needs to be a recall, they will initiate the recall or ask the pet food manufacturer to do so. The second one, the main one, is the Association of American Feed Control Officials. Now, these folks, they're an independent organization. They're not part of the government. They guide state and federal and even international feed regulators with ingredient definitions and label standards for animal feed to ensure an animal can survive on the food it's being fed. They do not have control to pass laws or enforce them, but they do send their guidelines to the federal regulation administrators, and those are the folks that do the laws. They're that independent organization, and they're run by people in the pet food industry. So at this point, before I switch to the next slide, that bag of food that you have handy, I want you to grab that bag. Sorry, I'm being kind of loud. And I want you to look on your bag for the name of your food. Mine is Real Turkey and Garbanzo Bean Recipe. So look on that bag of food of yours and take note of the name of your food. Now, the name of your food can actually tell us quite a bit about, not everything, but quite a bit about what's inside your bag. So let's talk about the 4 rules that the FDA has governing how pet companies can name your food and what that actually means. So the first one, Rule 1, it's called the 95% rule, which means 95% of the food must be made up of the single named ingredient. So if my food said turkey dog food, if I looked at the ingredient label, 95% of that label should be made up of turkey. Rule number 2. The 25% dinner rule. Now, this is the most common rule when it comes to pet kibble. The named ingredients must make up a minimum of 25% of the product and less than 95, of course, because we have the 95 rule if it was higher. In this case, the name must incorporate a descriptive term like dinner, entree, formula, recipe, etc. Also, each ingredient named must constitute a minimum of 3% of the total food. So here's an example. If we had a turkey and sweet potato recipe dog food, at least 10% of the total weight for turkey I'm sorry, not 10%. I have a little typo here. At least 20, it has to be at least 25% between turkey and sweet potato, but the lower one has to be higher than 3%. I apologize for that typo. I didn't catch that earlier today. Okay, now we have the 3% rule. This one is what's called the with rule or the contains rule. And here is why. This guideline enables pet food makers to list any minor ingredients that add up to at least 3% of the product. So if you have a pet food with the term with cranberries, that means there is at least 3% cranberry in that food. However, when it comes to feeding a dog, I know sometimes it can get confusing. So here's an example. Real turkey and sweet potato recipe with cranberries dog food. So anytime you see that with, whatever follows after that is at least 3%. And rule number 4, our final rule, the flavor rule. When using the flavor word, the word flavor in our naming of our food, no specific percentage of flavoring is required, but there must be enough to be detected if someone were to put this into a laboratory and run a DNA test or run some kind of testing to determine if that's in there, it has to show up. So if you have a food called turkey flavored dog food, usually that means there's less than 1% of that in the product. So if you had a turkey flavored dog food, there's not really a whole lot of animal-based protein, if any at all, in there. So that's kind of a hint that you want to stay away from those kinds of options. Okay, next we're going to turn our bag over to the back side. And we are going to, sorry, one more click. We're going to the guaranteed analysis, and it looks kind of similar to this image I have here. And you should be able to find that down on the bottom or near the top, in the middle. There's a few different spots where yours will be. So on the guaranteed analysis, these are the requirements that the FDA has set. It has to have the crude protein and the crude fat, and these are the minimums. So the food can actually contain more fat and more protein than what's listed, but it has to have at least that amount. And then it has to contain the crude fiber and the moisture, which is the maximum allowed. So there could be less fiber or less moisture in the bag than what you see there on the label. Some companies also include guarantees of other beneficial nutrients as well. Now, keep in mind the word crude actually refers to the specific method of testing the product, not to the quality of the nutrient itself. Other examples of the minimum amount of taurine or the maximum percentage of ash, if you've seen taurine or ash, or in this case, omega-6 fatty acids or glucosamine, those are allowed to be in the food, but they aren't required to be in the food. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. And when you see the term ash, some people actually think there's legitimate ash in their pet food, and that's not it at all. Ash is actually, it's a reference to the non-biological ingredients in the food, which is usually just the minerals. If you were to take the food and incinerate it, it's they call it ash because what's left over is ash, but it's the minerals that are remaining in the food. But there is no ash in your pet's food. So don't worry about that. Okay, now we are going to look at the nutritional adequacy statement. This is usually kind of small, so you might have to really look on your bag in a few different places. I'm trying to actually find mine, but it is going to be on every pet food. Oftentimes, it is going to be down below the guaranteed analysis or just to one side or the other. So mine is underneath the daily feeding guidelines. It's down here. So what this is and why it's important. The nutritional adequacy statement ensures you're feeding your pet a complete and balanced diet based on their life stage. So you want to make sure your pet has one of these two statements. Number one, This pet food is formulated to meet the nutritional levels established by AAFCO, again, the people who set the parameters and the baseline requirements for nutrition, for, in this case, dog food nutrient profiles for adult maintenance. That's one statement you could have. The second one is animal feeding tests using AAFCO procedures substantiate that this dog food provides complete and balanced nutrition for adult maintenance. So either your pet food is either going to be formulated based on prior foods that have been tested and have done well, or it's actually going to be having a feeding test done on it. So there's two options there. You're going to have one or the other. Now, I do need to caveat that the formulated foods created using AAFCO's guidelines ensure that all vitamins, minerals, proteins, and fats must be in the food to ensure that a pet can survive on the food without supplementation. It, however, does not mean that the food is going to extend your pet's health or be the best, healthiest option for your pet. It's formulated to meet the basic nutritional needs of the animal, and most pets actually need supplementation to have a healthy, long life. The same applies to the formulas that use animal feeding tests for their formulations. The dog or cat may survive on the food, but it may be lacking in basic nutrients for a healthy life. Some examples would include omega-3s from flaxseed oil or fish oil, glucosamine and chondroitin for joint health. Those aren't required AAFCO's requirements. So those are really good things pets need, but not all foods have them. So keep that in mind. Okay, now we're going to look at the ingredient panel, which is where you have the list of everything in your food. So mine's actually this section here. So go ahead and find that on yours. While you're looking, I'm just going to grab a quick drink. Okay. On the ingredient panel, it is required that ingredients are listed in order from heaviest to the lightest weight before cooking. The first ingredient is the heaviest, but does not necessarily mean it has the most of that ingredient, and I'll talk about that here soon. Fresh ingredients added to kibble before cooking have a lot of water weight, especially when using fresh animal proteins like chicken or fish. To help you understand, let's take a look at the first 5 ingredients in this example ingredient list. Here I have chicken, rice, brown rice, and soybeans. Based on what you've learned and what we've talked about the naming of the food and that ingredient lists have to be the heaviest listed first, what do you think the name of this food recipe should be called? And if you want to put it in the comments, I'd love for you to interact a little bit. And I'll see if we've got some comments over here. Oh, I even see that we have a picture. Kara sent a picture of her ingredient label. Awesome. With her nutritional adequacies. That's great. Okay, so Marcy says rice and chicken. Christy says chicken and rice. And the two choices are chicken and rice or rice and chicken. Chicken and rice. Good. Thanks for participating, you three. I appreciate your comments. So by definition, and we haven't talked about the definition of chicken, but by definition, chicken here is actually a fresh chicken that has moisture in it. And so when this chicken has the moisture removed, it actually will be significantly lighter than, say, the rice and brown rice if they were dry put in. So honestly, this could be chicken and rice or rice and chicken, depending on if the rice and brown rice were added as a wet ingredient or were added as dry already. And if they were added as dry and the chicken was wet, then this food would actually be a rice and chicken dinner. There are 2 different rices here, and depending on the amounts, this actually might have more rice than it does chicken. So it's a little tricky sometimes to look at labels, and pet food companies do some things to kind of help deceive us pet parents, unfortunately. So I'm hoping you guys can take away something tonight to help you have a little better understanding. So let me jump here. All right. Oh, and also, this is a really big one. I'm not covering all of the pet food ingredient definitions because they're very lengthy, but I want to share with you that I highly encourage you to stay away from pet foods if the label says something like meat meal or meat and bone meal, because those can be from any mammal: goats, cows, giraffes, zebras. I'm not even joking. People have done DNA tests on pet food. Even horse has shown up in DNAs of pet food, because you just don't know what you're feeding your pet when you get a meat meal or a meat and bone meal. But if I were to give you one huge red flag, like do not feed this, if period, at all whatsoever, unless you absolutely positively have to, animal byproduct meal. This particular ingredient definition based on AAFCO is any animal. It could be reptilian, it could be mammal, it could be any kinds of things. And so if you like knowing what you're feeding your pet, absolutely stay away from animal byproduct meal, and I would not go towards meat meal or meat and bone meal, just as a little warning. So let's jump in. Now, we just talked about the chicken, the rice, the brown rice, and then the soybean, right? I asked you, well, what should this thing be called? Well, there is a thing called ingredient splitting when it comes to your pet food. And now if you look at your label, you may find some of the same item listed in different ways. So here, for example, we have corn gluten meal, and corn flour. Now, if we look at this example, based on AAFCO's 25% rule, this pet food would have to be called corn and rice dinner for dogs. Would you want to feed that to your pet? Most folks wouldn't, because we want to feed our pets an animal-based protein. So pet food companies know that. So what oftentimes they have done is they will split the ingredients. So note the first corn is the number one ingredient at 30%, and then of course rice at 20%, and then the chicken meal is at 18%. Now, if we look at the image after the ingredient split, the second image here, they have split corn into cornmeal and corn flour, and the rice into white rice and brown rice. Now, the problem with this is that now bumps the chicken to the top of the ingredient list. So when you're looking at your ingredient list, you're like, yeah, chicken's the number one ingredient, which some companies claim. But then you look deeper and you see, oh, but there's two kinds of corn and two kinds of rice. So is their chicken really the number one ingredient? So that's something to keep an eye on and look out for as well. Now, I am going to cover the 5 most common ingredients in pet food. Number 1, corn. Is that a surprise? For me, it's not. We do see a lot, especially the grocery store brands, a lot of those have corn or some variation of corn. And of course, corn gluten meal is another one of the top 5, and that is a variation of corn. In this case, it's corn, but they've had the protein portion this is what's left over of the protein after the starch has been removed. And it's really high in protein, so a lot of pet food companies use it because it's a cheap protein and it's cheaper than an animal-based protein like chicken meal or beef meal. Then we have beef and bone meal. So this is one of the ones I said is not a good one to feed your pet. So it looks fine. It's a ground up brown powder, no big deal, but it's actually made out of any tissue from any mammal, excluding added blood, hair, hoof, hide, and stomach contents. So it can be anything else of the animal minus that part. Then we have poultry byproduct meal, which again, doesn't look intimidating. It could make up, based on AAFCO definitions, poultry heads, necks, feet, intestines, internal organs, and undeveloped eggs. And then this is the one we want to see in all of our pet foods over the rest of the items. It is one of the other top 5 ingredients, common ingredients. I shouldn't say top, I should say common. And chicken, when it's listed just as chicken, is the combination of flesh and skin with or without bone, derived from the parts or whole carcasses of chicken. It excludes the feathers, the heads, the feet, and the entrails because they save those for the byproduct meal. And then if the bone has been removed, then it may be called deboned chicken on your ingredient list. So how many of you have any of these items on your pet food list? You should have at least some kind of animal-based protein. Yes, Elizabeth commented, even the prescription diets are full of corn. They really are. Corn and soybean and wheats usually. So mine was a turkey, and I don't have any chicken in mine and sometimes it might be say turkey, but it might have chicken and turkey. So it wouldn't be uncommon for chicken to be on yours. So Christy has chicken. I have chicken, but I don't have any of the other items. And I will tell you, that's good. Food Christy's feeding is a great food to not have these other ones. We could have a whole nother presentation about why these other ones aren't always good for your pet to be eating, but we'll save that for another day. Okay. So we are going to talk now. We're going to shift a little bit to pet food claims. And you're going to need your bag of food again because you're going to be looking at this. And it may have your claim on the front or the back of the bag. So you'll have to take a peek. So a claim is a statement made on pet food packaging that tells the customer what's special or different about the product to make it stand out from the rest on the shelf. So remember when I mentioned that AAFCO compliant foods meet the very bare minimum standard to keep a pet alive, but it's not enough to keep your pet living a long, healthy life? Well, here's where the claims come in. So AAFCO does not require chondroitin or glucosamine in their nutrient profiles. So a company could add those ingredients and claim those that they're in there to support joint health. That would be a claim. Here are some other claims. And now these claims, pet food companies can't just throw this onto their pet food bag and call it good. Like they are regulated by the FDA and by AAFCO and even some state feed regulatory agencies. So if you have a claim on your bag, rest assured, they have paid to have it done and looked at. And often these claims must have scientific data to back them up in addition to meeting those legal requirements. So it costs more money. So most pet companies only have 1 or 2 claims, maybe 3 or 4, if they have any at all. If you don't see any claims on your pet food bag, it's probably not a very good food. So the claim can describe an ingredient or the nutrition that the food provides. And another example would be no poultry byproducts. Or it contains taurine to support eye and heart health. So claims are really good to look at. So if you guys want to look at your bag and see if you can tell and go ahead and comment. I'd love to hear what your claims are on your pet food. So here's one right here. Mine says antioxidant rich. I'm going to type that in. So that is a claim. Yes, Christy. So she said no corn, no wheat, and no soy. That is also can be a claim, considered a claim. Have you guys ever seen the one that says formulated for reduced stool volume? How many of you have to pick up your doggy's poo-poo in the backyard? I have a Great Dane. So he uses like 1 poop bag for each poop. So reduced stool volume is always welcome in this house. All life stages. You know what, Connie? I think I may have skipped past. Oh, actually, I think that all life stages is coming up, or shoot, maybe I did skip it. I might have to go back and look. I do need to address that. I think I missed that in my AAFCO portion. No added sugars or sweeteners. That's correct. No artificial colors, flavors, or preserves. Yes, those are all claims. Perfect. And you know what? I am so glad that Connie mentioned all life stages because Connie, I totally skipped a slide that talked about life stages. Give me just one moment. I'm going to see if I can't pull that one up. It was back when we talked about I apologize, everybody. I get so excited. I must have double clicked somewhere. Okay. So we talked about the nutritional adequacy statement. This was part 1. I even have it labeled part 1 and part 2, and I skipped part 2. So part 2 mentioned make sure you're feeding the proper life stage for your pet. And the recognized life stages by AAFCO for both dogs and cats are gestation and lactation for pregnancy and nursing, growth for puppies and kittens, maintenance for adults, and then all life stages actually meets parameters for all of those. And these life stages require different nutrients for every stage. So keep in mind that feeding the wrong life stage to your pet may cause long-term health problems. And I'll give you an example. You don't want to feed puppy food to an overweight dog because it is very high in fat, high in protein, high in carbs, and that overweight dog is just going to get more overweight. So that's an example. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that was Connie that reminded me of that. I apologize I missed that. So let's jump back to where we were. Bear with me. I appreciate your patience. Oh, here we go. Went too far. Got so excited. Okay, so next one. We're back again with the pet food claims, okay? So, oh, Christy said hers says formulated for reduced stool volume. Yes. And then Maria says hers was developed by veterinarians and nutritionists. Yes, that is a really important one. You want someone who knows what they're doing formulating their food. Now, if you are on this call and you've been invited here by someone else, there's a really good chance that they feed pottery food. And I will tell you why. I am going to share with you the reasons why those folks, and myself included, this is actually the food I recommend to anybody that asks me why I feed it. Pottery has 20 reasons why and claims that they have for their food. Now remember, every claim that a company makes costs them money to prove it with science, and or legally they have to file legal paperwork to make sure. So it's expensive. So not too many companies do this. Pottery is the only company that has 20 claims. Everybody else is like 2, 3, 4, or 5 maybe. So Pottery claims that they have 12 natural recipes to choose from, 8 different protein sources. They're grain-free and healthy grain options. They're high in protein, real meat as the first ingredient, antioxidant-rich formulas, natural source of DHA, because again, DHA is not required by AAFCO, which supports healthy brain development, contains taurine to support heart health, prebiotics to support a healthy digestive tract, balanced calcium and phosphorus for bone and tooth health, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids for healthy skin and coat, good source of natural glucosamine to help maintain joint health, no corn, wheat, or soy, no poultry byproducts, and formulated for reduced stool volume, which if you pick up your own doggy doo-doo, that's a great one. No added sugars or sweeteners, no artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. Complete and balanced nutrition for dogs and cats, if we're looking at the cat recipes, and developed by veterinarians and nutritionists. Pottery is an absolutely amazing food company, and I have seen a huge difference using this food with my own dogs, as well as the folks that I refer to using this product. Pottery has a different set of standards they live by than most pet food companies out there, and they exceed the industry standards because they live up to their own, which are higher than the industry standards. So if you are, let's jump to the next one. If you gave your pet's food anywhere from a 1 to 7 rating earlier at the beginning of this presentation, I highly encourage you to get back to the person that invited you here tonight and talk with them about the pottery food and why it is so amazing. Most likely, the person who invited you is feeding pottery, and you can ask them, what kind of a difference did you see with your pets when you started feeding this food? And they also will probably have plenty of other stories from other people that have used the food as well. They can show you how this food can help your pets. And we really have a cool tool. Pottery has this option with a proprietary pet profile system where you enter your pet's information and it will calculate age, activity level, if they're a nursing dog or if they're neutered or not. And it will take into consideration allergies and other things, and it will compile all that and find the perfect recipe for your pet based on all of the information that you put in. So it's really a customized, personalized option, and it's one of the best foods that you can get, but you can't get it from the store. So talk to the individual who invited you here tonight about this if you are a 1 to 7. And if you're an 8 or above, but your pet has issues, maybe they have allergies or anxiety, I would also encourage you to go back and talk to the other person, because Patri has solutions for those issues as well. So I appreciate everybody joining tonight, and I really hope that I helped you to better understand the pet food labels. I was trying to keep this down to about 30 minutes, and I think I accomplished it. Sorry I jumped over a slide or two, but hopefully we got everything covered. And next month, I would love to invite you back to hear Chuck Holt discuss pet obesity on May 28th. And I can actually grab the link for that. I'm going to throw it in the chat. And I would encourage you to go ahead and register for that now so that you can have that put onto your calendar and you can join us again next month. I really appreciate everyone for coming out and for your time this evening. Again, reach out to the person that invited you here today. And if you know someone that could benefit from watching this, ask the person that invited you to get the recording. And if you pre-registered, you should get the recording in your email and send this to them. Help them help their pet, because there are so many pet parents out there that just don't know what they don't know. So again, I appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.